Imagine this scenario for a second. You walk into your house after a really long, exhausting day.
Oh, yeah, we've all had those.
Right. And you just toss your keys onto the kitchen counter. Like you actually hear the metal clink against the granite. You know exactly where they are.
You have that concrete memory of putting them down.
Exactly. But then the next morning, you're rushing out the door, you go to the counter, and the keys are just gone.
Which is the most frustrating feeling in the world.
It really is. So you start frantically searching everywhere, tearing the house apart, and finally, you find them hanging neatly on the key rack by the door. A rack that you swear you never even touched.
Yeah, and normally you just, chalk that up to forgetfulness, brain fog, or whatever.
Right, totally. But what if it wasn't a memory lapse at all? What if that missing set of keys was actual, tangible proof that you had just seamlessly slipped into an entirely different, alternate universe?
I mean, it forces a total reevaluation of our memory, doesn't it? The proposition that our reality is infinitely porous and that we are just constantly tumbling through it, completely blind to the transitions.
And that terrifying proposition is actually the core mission of today's deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We are unpacking the reality-altering mechanics hidden within Paula J. Slaughter's String Walker universe.
Specifically focusing on some of the massive revelations from the silent conspiracy, right?
Yes, exactly. So for those following the overarching narrative, our protagonist, Scarlett, possesses an ability that goes way beyond, like, a typical sci-fi superpower.
Yeah, it's not just shooting lasers or flying.
Far from it. Today, we are going to really examine the actual physics of how she interacts with destiny, the biological mechanisms that keep the rest of us oblivious, and a climax that basically upends how we understand consciousness and survival itself.
What's fascinating here is how the source material uses this framework of quantum mechanics and the multiverse to explore very intimate human trauma.
Yeah, it gets really personal.
It does. It isn't just about bending space and time. It is a profound philosophical deep dive into grief, the sheer terror of infinite choice, and, those invisible threads connecting every single consequence in our lives.
So to start, let's look at the mechanics of what it actually means to, quote-unquote, walk. Because the visual language the author uses during Scarlett's trance at the funeral home, well, it provides our baseline.
That scene is incredibly vivid.
It really is. The text describes her slipping away from this really mundane family moment. She's just playing patty cake with her nephew Noah, and suddenly she is standing in a pitch-black void.
But it's not empty.
No, not at all. The void is filled with this massive, infinite spiderweb of glowing strings. And there are these tiny lights darting around like shooting stars, which her mother later identifies as actual human souls transitioning between dimensions.
Right, and the spatial representation of time and choice is really critical there. It isn't just like an empty hallway of doors. It is a dense, interwoven tapestry.
Okay, let's unpack this spatial movement. Because the way it works, it operates almost like she's scrubbing through a YouTube video of reality.
Oh, that's a great way to picture it.
Yeah, so she looks at one string and sees Noah sitting at a kitchen table. If she stays on that continuous string, she watches his future unfold rapidly, like he grows up, falls in love, he ages.
And if she walks backward on that same string, she rewinds into his past.
Exactly. But staying on the continuous string just makes her a seer.
Right, someone who just observes a fixed, isolated causal loop of a single universe. They watch, but they don't change anything.
But stepping off the string, that is where the narrative introduces genuine chaos. Because if she crosses over to a different string entirely, she has entered an alternate timeline where different choices were made.
She's actively viewing infinite branching realities at that point.
Yes, but this is where I have to push back a little on the text's own internal logic. Specifically regarding that conversation Scarlett has with her friend Sam.
Ah, the string theory conversation.
Yeah. Sam tries to map this experience directly onto literal string theory in physics. And as a reader, I'm thinking, wait a minute.
It doesn't quite line up.
Right. Because string theory posits that the fundamental building blocks of the universe are these microscopic, one-dimensional, vibrating filaments at the Planck length.
Right.
Like it's entirely subatomic.
And Scarlett is describing walking on massive, glowing, cosmic tightropes in a void.
Exactly. Those are two fundamentally different definitions of strings.
It is a vital distinction. And I think the text actually uses Sam's assumption to highlight a very common misunderstanding of theoretical physics.
Oh, so?
Well, Sam is trying to map a microscopic mathematical model onto a macro-level supernatural experience. However, if we look at the evolution of string theory into M
Well,
theory,
M theory, right.
yeah, which
Yeah.
introduces vibrating, multidimensional membranes or brains, the conceptual bridge becomes much, much stronger there. M theory suggests our universe might just be one membrane floating in a higher dimensional space, and occasionally these membranes collide with others.
So Scarlet isn't literally shrinking down to a subatomic level to walk on a mathematical filament.
Far from it. She is stepping outside of our specific dimensional brain and into the bulk space between universes.
I see.
So Sam's connection matters not because it's a perfect physical match, but because it establishes the underlying philosophy of the universe, which is total, absolute interconnectedness.
And the realization that Scarlet isn't just watching from a safe distance.
Exactly. Her ability to step between these strings means she can actively interact with and alter the flow of events across dimensions.
That ability to change the future is an incredible amount of power. But, I mean, if string theory is about total, infinite interconnectedness, tapping into that web without any sort of filter would be absolutely devastating to a human mind.
It would completely overload your neural pathways.
Right. The sheer computational load of perceiving infinite realities simultaneously would just break you. And that's exactly the generational curse Scarlet inherits.
Yeah, the psychological toll is where the story pivots from fantasy directly into horror. The text strips away all the glamour of having, superpowers.
It's not fun at all.
No. When Scarlett's mother reveals their lineage over breakfast, she doesn't present it as a gift. She frames it as a deeply traumatic inheritance. We learn about grandmother Telsa, a brilliant string walker who inexplicably lost her abilities at age 22.
And then the mother reveals her own history of being repeatedly institutionalized throughout Scarlett's entire childhood.
Which is just heartbreaking. Scarlett grew up thinking her mother suffered from severe clinical delusions.
Right, but the mother confesses that her illness was actually just the unfiltered raw data of the multiverse flooding her consciousness. She was literally seeing too much of reality at once.
Because the human mind simply isn't built to process infinite variations of a single moment, it radically recontextualizes Scarlett's entire upbringing.
It really does.
Her mother was experiencing severe cognitive fragmentation. I mean, think about it. When you cannot distinguish which version of your daughter is the real one in your current timeline, how do you even maintain a cohesive sense of self?
You can't. Which is why, to combat that fragmentation, the mother passes down a family heirloom. It's this oval-shaped crystal pendant.
A very crucial tool in the lore.
Yeah, and the text is very specific about it. It pulses with energy and shifts through this whole spectrum of colors, like purple, blue, red, green, black, and clear. And you have to hold it tightly during a trance to make it work.
I always tell people to think of that crystal as industrial-grade, noise-canceling headphones for the multiverse.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, because without it, the branching realities just bleed into normal dreams, creating a cacophony of contradictory memories and prophecies. The crystal anchors the user's consciousness.
It filters out the static.
Exactly. It filters the static so the walker can isolate a single string, a single timeline, without losing their grip on their origin reality.
So it's essentially a tool for clarity. But right after explaining the crystal, the mother follows up with a revelation that completely upends how we understand consciousness in this universe. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, definitely.
She reveals that string walking isn't just a genetic anomaly restricted to their specific bloodline. Everyone string walks. Every single human being, multiple times a day.
This is the lost keys theory at work, which you mentioned at the start.
Yes.
The mother outlines a mechanism where consciousness is constantly seeking resonance. When a normal person's thoughts, emotional state, and physical location perfectly match the frequency of their biological counterpart in a twin universe.
Their consciousness seamlessly slips across the barrier.
Exactly. They literally pull themselves into a reality that is 99.9% identical to the one they just left.
And the only difference might be that in this new universe, you lost a watch. You search the house, you check the car, and it's just gone.
And the mother insists it didn't just fall behind the dresser.
Right. It physically does not exist in your current universe anymore. You jump to a timeline where the watch was lost. But I have to admit, I struggle a bit with the biological explanation provided here.
With the protection gene.
Yeah. The text introduces this concept of a protection gene that normal people have, which supposedly keeps them ignorant of these jumps. But wait, how does a biological gene, which dictates, like, cellular function, protect against a macro-level quantum event like dimension hopping.
It is a fascinating biological paradox, but the most logical way to interpret the protection gene within the lore is not as a physical shield against the quantum shift, but as a cognitive firewall.
Cognitive firewall.
Yeah, think of it like an IT department silently clearing your browser cache during a massive server migration.
Okay, that makes sense.
The migration, the jump between universes, still happens, but the gene triggers an immediate, localized amnesia regarding the discrepancy. It forces the brain to rationalize the shift.
So instead of your brain saying, hey, I have entered a new dimension, the gene forces the brain to say, I just have a terrible memory and misplaced my keys.
Precisely. It creates blissful ignorance, it protects the ego, and the timeline's continuity.
Wow.
And the profound tragedy of a stringwalker is that they possess root access to the system, but they lack that firewall. They remember the shift.
So they retain the residual consciousness and all the memories of the reality they just abandoned.
Yes. To be a stringwalker is to be perpetually homesick for a reality that evaporated seconds ago.
That sounds absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
And honestly, it perfectly sets the stage for the terrifying climax of the source material, because Scarlet is about to discover that these shifts aren't just triggered by mundane things like misplaced watches.
No, they are triggered by terminal danger.
Right. It begins with a dream where Scarlet and her cat, Cuts, are just sitting out on the porch. And suddenly this massive apocalyptic wind picks up, blowing them right off their chairs.
The text focuses really heavily on the visceral, tactile sensations of the environment dissolving here, the foundation of the house literally being ripped upward.
Yeah, it's intense. The cat panics in midair, violently scratches Scarlet's hand, and then hides. Then the wind just stops and the house free falls toward the ground. Death is absolutely certain.
But a millisecond before impact.
Scarlet gasps awake on her living room sofa. The porch is fine. The house is completely quiet. But we have to look at the mother's protocol for testing these visions, because it establishes a vital rule of causality in this universe.
Yes, earlier the mother had instructed Scarlet on how to alter her physical state within a dream to test it, like paint her nails or tear a piece of clothing.
Right, something tangible.
Exactly. Because if that physical alteration crosses over into the waking world, it was not a dream. It was a conscious walk into a literal future.
Causality bridging the dimensions. So Scarlet goes to wash her hands. She winces and looks down. And she has a fresh bleeding scratch on her hand, the exact scratch the cat gave her in the dream.
That physical anchor proves the timeline is collapsing toward that specific future. The tornado isn't just a possibility anymore. It is an incoming reality.
And the pacing of the narrative just completely fractures here. The tornado siren blares. They have less than 6 minutes to impact. They follow standard survival protocol, heading down to an unfinished basement bathroom.
But the cat is missing.
Right, so Scarlet sprints back upstairs, completely ignoring every survival instinct, and spots the cat under a coffee table. But before she can grab him, the windows explode inward.
The cinematic horror of the scene is incredible.
It is. She watches the roof tear off into the sky in slow motion, and then a massive truck plummets through the open roof, heading directly for her. And the text just cuts to black.
It is absolute catastrophic destruction of the physical form. There is no biological way to survive the event described.
None.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? How do we explain the very next chapter? Because Scarlet just opens her eyes. She is sitting on the floor of the basement bathroom with her mother, who is calmly holding the cat. Her mother is completely bewildered when Scarlet asks how they survived the truck.
The mother's like, what truck?
Exactly. The mother says Scarlet just ran upstairs, grabbed the cat, and came right back down. They walk upstairs, and the house is pristine. No broken glass, no missing roof, just some leaves on the lawn.
But there is one detail.
Yes. Scarlet looks at her hand. The cat's scratch, the physical anchor that proved the vision was real, is completely gone.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is essentially exploring a localized version of Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation.
Right.
Specifically, the concept of quantum immortality. Because the mother looks at the missing scratch and delivers the most chilling revelation of the entire narrative. She tells Scarlet that she didn't just have a prophetic vision of the tornado, she experienced it, she lived it.
She tells Scarlet that she died. The truck actually crushed her in that original timeline.
The mechanics of the shift here are brutal. When a stringwalker's physical body is destroyed, their observation of that specific timeline instantly terminates.
Because the consciousness can no longer tether to a dead brain.
Exactly. So it violently and instantaneously yanks itself across a dimensional brain into the closest available biological counterpart.
A twin universe. A reality that is like 99.99% identical, but where the tornado either missed the house entirely or was just a minor storm. The scratch is gone because the cat never panicked in this specific universe.
But the psychological horror is that Scarlett's consciousness, her memory of the truck, the shattering glass, the death itself, remains entirely intact.
The protection gene didn't wipe the cache.
No, and she is now permanently stranded. Her mother explains that she can't go back because her body in the origin universe is dead.
She is forced to just live there,
Yeah.
to pretend everything is perfectly normal. But think about the sheer isolating terror of that existence.
It's unbearable.
Scarlett is sitting in a pristine living room, looking at her mother, knowing with absolute terrifying certainty that her original mother, the woman who handed her the crystal pendant that very morning, was crushed to death in a basement while a truck fell on Scarlett upstairs.
It is the ultimate manifestation of survivor's guilt, weaponized by quantum physics. Because the mother sitting across from her is a perfect biological and behavioral replica.
Yeah.
She possesses all the same memories up until the divergence point, but she is not the exact same entity that experienced the morning with her.
Scarlett is completely alienated from her own life.
Right. Her supernatural ability hasn't elevated her. It has turned her into a refugee in her own home.
It really strips away all the romanticism of the multiverse trope.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this deep dive isn't about the mechanics of a cool time travel power. It's an examination of the crushing responsibility of infinite awareness.
The text forces us to look at the fragility of our own continuity. We are all navigating an extraordinary cosmic tapestry, making infinite choices that spawn infinite realities.
But the reason we can function, the reason we can just get up and go to work, is the biological grace of that protection gene.
Yes, we are permitted to remain sane because we are forbidden from seeing the sheer scale of what we survive every single day. Scarlett's story is the horror of having that blindfold permanently removed.
Which radically changes how you have to view your own day-to-day life. I want you, the listener, to really examine those minor, inexplicable moments.
Those little glitches.
A ring you swear you left by the bathroom sink that just vanishes. A childhood memory you have in vivid detail that your sibling insists never happened. Or, a car swerving into your lane on the highway and you slam on the brakes just in the nick of time.
Yeah.
What if those aren't just memory lapses or lucky breaks? What if they are the subtle, lingering evidence that you actually perished in a catastrophe in another timeline, and your consciousness seamlessly mapped itself onto a safer twin universe without you ever even knowing?
It suggests our continued existence might just be an illusion created by a consciousness that simply refuses to acknowledge its own end, perpetually skipping to the next surviving timeline.
Which brings me to one final, deeply unsettling thought for you to mull over. If the mother's twin universe theory is entirely accurate, when you shift to escape danger, you pull your consciousness into a twin universe.
Right.
But there was already a version of you occupying that specific reality, right? Like the you that remembered to hang the keys on the rack.
The biological host was already occupied by a native consciousness.
So when your mind is violently yanked into that new reality to survive a car crash or a falling truck, what exactly happens to the consciousness of the you that was already living there in peace?
Did your sudden arrival just overwrite them?
Did you murder a version of yourself to survive?
Oh?
Or are your two minds now quietly and visibly sharing the exact same biological space, one dominant and one suppressed, forever?
Are we the original architects of our own minds, or merely the silent invaders of a reality we didn't build?
Next time you find those keys hanging on the rack, when you absolutely know you left them on the counter, maybe you should ask yourself who exactly put them there.